Welcome to the Manufacturing Matters podcast with the Council of Industry. Join us as we bring you inspiring stories, interviews, and insights from across the Hudson Valley that will revolutionize the way you think about manufacturing. This podcast is proudly sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, a leading accounting and advisory firm dedicated to helping businesses thrive in the manufacturing sector. With their industry knowledge and strategic guidance, PKF O'Connor Davies ensures that manufacturers have the financial insights and support they need to achieve success.
Roberta Reardon, Commissioner of the New York State Department of Labor. Welcome to the Council of Industry podcast.
Thank you so much, Harold. It's great to be here with you. You're a great partner in this.
Thank you. So tell us about the Department of Labor. It is a substantial organization in the state.
It is a large organization. We have it varies. I think currently we're at about 3,500 employees across the state. And we have a very broad mission. On the workforce development side, we help connect workers to careers that they will thrive in and help them find training opportunities, help upskilling, all of that kind of thing. We help employers find great employees and talk to employers all the time about what are the deficits that you see? How can we help workers come to you? And we have a lot of intersection there. On the unemployment insurance side, of course, we help people when they leave a job through no fault of their own. And the unemployment insurance benefit is there to help them as they look for new work. Obviously, as they're looking for new work, they are also invited to come to us for all of that assistance. And again, for employers, we help them through whatever that unemployment situation may be. Obviously, during the pandemic, it was very difficult, but it changes, for each employer, it changes often, and we're there for the employers as well. But the worker protection side, we enforce all of the New York State and federal, most of the New York State laws and regulations on employment, wage and hour. We have a public safety and health unit. We have an Office of Special Investigations that looks into fraud, mostly on the UI side. They've been very active in the last couple of years, as you can imagine. And we have a group that works with immigrant workers, making sure that their rights are protected, and we work with them in various languages. Public work is also a very vibrant part of our agency, making sure that all the public work laws are enforced and observed. And all of the agency is here to ensure that workers have a path to employment that is good and life-supporting for them and their families, help support them in time of need when they lose their job, and help them on the job to make sure that they're working in a safe, protected environment and that all of our regulations are enforced. And we make sure that the business community is very much a part of this conversation. So it's a big job.
As you describe it, it's even bigger than I thought. Talk a little bit about that dual role. I know employers, on the one hand, you will get a visit from the wage and hour police. And then on the other hand, you're saying, hey, let us in to help you find the right employees and grow your workforce.
It is a little bit of a balance. I mean, oftentimes people think of us as the sheriff because we all have badges. And as you say, we show up and knock on the door and say, we need to see your records. But we do that really in support of the business community, because as you know, if you're working in a sector and everybody's playing by the rules and the guy down the street's paying under the table, he's not paying into worker comp or UI, he's not paying overtime, he's cheating the other businesses in the sector. So I really look at the enforcement side, not only to protect the workers, but also to protect the overwhelming majority of employers who are doing the right thing. And we want to make sure that they're protected. The other thing we do in worker protection is we have a lot of compliance meetings. So new regulations come out, pay transparency. How do I enforce that? What does that mean? And we can go out and sit down with employers and walk them through what the new regulations mean, when they come into effect. We would much rather work with an employer to get them into compliance rather than chase them and have to hand them a fine and a penalty. So, it's very, we understand we have laws that need to be enforced, and we're strict about that, but we also understand there can be confusion. We have a whole business services segment in workforce development. Their entire job is to reach out to the employer community, go to the business. You don't have to come to us. Sit down and talk about, what are your needs? What kind of employees are you looking for? What kind of deficits are you seeing? Do you not see enough skill in a particular area? Do they need to be bilingual? Do they need to have more digital information and work on that? But at the same time, they'll also help that employer understand what are the tax credits that are available? How can I apply for them? Are there training funds that I might be able to apply for my employees, like apprenticeship? So a lot of it, I think a lot of times people think we're there for the worker. Well, the worker doesn't survive if they don't have a good employer. It's a symbiotic relationship.
For sure. So I have the privilege now of serving on the State Workforce Investment Board, and I've opened a whole bunch of fascinating insights. Could you talk a little bit about the network through the county workforce investment boards and kind of how that system works? I think there's a little bit of confusion of where the overlap lies and who all the actors are.
It is a little confusing and it's pretty iterated, to be quite clear. The local workforce boards are really important because they reflect the local economy. They are the people, they are the real boots on the ground, what's going on in Poughkeepsie and Syracuse in a county. And so they give us frontline information about what is needed in that community. We also have, as you know, the State Workforce Investment Board, which is the large body overseeing the policy of the state. Where are we going to go? What kind of training programs do we need? What are the deficits that we're seeing? What are the educational opportunities that we need to promote? Like, again, apprenticeships, which is a great,
we'll get there.
I know.
We will definitely get there.
but it's a way to link up the local conversation with the state policy directors and make sure that those avenues of conversation are really open. The workforce development side of the State Department of Labor is almost 100% financed by the federal budget. So we have a lot of federal programs. That's where our training dollars come from, the WIOA and the money, various things like that. And so we have a federal responsibility that we have to meet, and then we have state responsibilities that we meet, and then there's the local component. So it is pretty iterated. The federal money for workforce development is really the engine. We don't have a lot of state money in workforce development training per se. It really is dictated by the federal government.
Interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about the two surveys because they have been fascinating. The results, the dichotomy between the job seekers, and this is a survey that I think was first done maybe 3 years ago, and so in conjunction with the Business Council, the job seekers survey and the business leaders survey.
Right.
Talk about that and how we're using that information.
So we realized that we were relying on a lot of anecdotal information to build our policy. And that's interesting, but not necessarily really
helpful.
Factual.
Right.
And there was a real disconnect, especially with the business community. We thought we knew what businesses need, and we would have individual conversations, but we needed a wider net. So actually, during the pandemic of all times, we actually had a little bit of time to think about how can we improve this? We're not doing workforce development right now the way we usually do, and we developed the surveys. The surveys go out, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's okay. It's not hundreds, it's thousands of respondents now. And to your listeners, anybody who gets a survey request, please fill it out because it gives us so much really good, hard information right from the employer. One of the number one things we learned right away was that most employers felt that they were not getting workers with enough digital education. And part of the problem is everybody has a cell phone and often has a smartphone, so they're working off that, but it's not a computer that you need in business. It's not a keyboard.
Right.
So they're not learning Microsoft Office,
right.
PowerPoint, Excel, right. Even Word. They're not learning how to do that. And they come into a work environment and they don't have the skill. That was pretty easy for us to begin to tackle because we developed a contract with North Star, which is a digital company. And now we offer free to anybody who, you have to come into the Career Center to do it. You come into the Career Center, we do an evaluation of where you are in your digital skills. And then in the Career Center on our computers, you can sit down and take classes and learn the Microsoft suite for free. This makes you so much more employable.
Sure.
We had people who were in accounting firms who said, I can't find people who know Excel, which is a little crazy.
Right.
So we didn't know that before. That is a great example of really targeted information, a targeted solution. What can we do about it? On the worker side, We always assumed that wages were the number one concern of workers. It's up there, but it's not number one, particularly post-pandemic work-life balance.
Mhm.
There's a lot of interest in remote work in certain categories. Young workers actually want to work in an office because they don't have those relationships.
We've noticed that, yes.
Yes.
Anecdotally, we see the same thing.
It's really true. Kids coming out of college, they've been isolated. They're the kids that went to school on Zoom. They
Right.
actually want to be in a setting where they meet other people, and they're new in their industry, so they need those networking opportunities. And for the people with children, when you move into your 30s, people with family responsibilities want to be able to juggle a little bit so that they're not maybe paying for 5 days of childcare. Maybe they're paying for 4, or they're swapping off. Those are things that have only happened in the last 5 years. And that's a really important piece of information that we only get out of the surveys.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll give a plug to Chris White, who has done such a great job with that and is helping you digest that information. And I think what I've really been impressed with is you are turning it into action.
Yes.
And that is something, it's really good to see. And it's good to see the shift happening and the recognition of reality on the ground, so to speak, of what's happening. And with that in mind, let's get a little bit to apprenticeship. I know it is something that you are passionate about and believe strongly in. Let's just talk broadly about what it is and how the Department of Labor has supported it for decades.
Mm-hmm. So, first step, registered apprenticeships are what we're talking about. Unofficial apprenticeships, which are not registered by the state, but it's different.
Yeah.
The registered apprenticeships are run by employers. They're the sponsors. And they can do that either as an individual employer or as a group sponsor. As you know, Council of Industry does the group approach, which we love. And you can also have an optional union partner if that's part of your business model. The programs can run from 1 to 5 years, depending on what the skill set that's needed. Participants earn a wage from day one. They're employees from the minute they become an apprentice. They may actually already be an employee, but once they're in the apprenticeship program, they're working, they earn a wage. And that wage increases as they improve their skill set. And that's in the training outline. So it's not a merit wage. It's really geared to what steps of the training program you're in. So everybody gets it at that step. At the end of at the graduation, the apprentice gets a credential that is nationally recognized. So if this person should want to go to another state, we don't want them to, but if they should want to go, that employer in another state can look up the training outline that they were trained under, because it's on our website, and they'll know exactly how they were trained. It is like a college degree, but it's different tools. It is actually, as opposed to a higher ed, a college or associate degree, this is really much more one-on-one. This is really a curated training program, and that apprentice learns on the job from a skilled worker who's working with them. And they're also working, they have a required instruction. It's at least
144 hours a year.
Thank you. 144 hours a year in classroom.
Yes.
So that they learn, the classroom learning as well. And the training outline is overseen by state education. So it's very formalized. It doesn't depend on who's training you. That's the one thing about unofficial apprenticeship, a casual apprenticeship. A lot of that training will depend on who's overseeing you. Right. This really is regimented. You're learning these skills at this time, and you graduate with a credential. It is a wonderful way for an employer to build out their skilled workforce. And obviously, if your employer is investing in your education, you have developed a very loyal employee, because they know that you care about them because you've made that investment. And the overwhelming number of apprentices stay with the people that train them because they value that. They also get mentoring from the first day. And that's a really key part of this. It's not just here's a job and I'm going to teach you the skill. From that skilled worker, they're also going to learn the unofficial things about that might be difficult about that job. And if you're a first-time member of your family to do this kind of work, you don't have people at home at the kitchen table to help you. So the mentors on the job are really key. And I tell employers all the time, this is your opportunity to make sure that you're developing an employee who is part of your collective, not just employee number 10. And that's a really important part of a business. They stay, they learn, they're part of the value structure, and they have no college debt.
Right.
And they have a very clear career path. And we know from experience that apprentices often then go on and may go to college to get additional training or information so they can move up the ladder. They may
Sure.
be good at this particular skill, but now I want to move into management. They can go to the community college and take those courses and be set up to keep moving up in the company. I have many friends in the construction trades who go through the construction trades have the gold standard, obviously, of apprenticeships. They become journey workers, and then they want to open their own plumbing shop. They go to the community college and get all the business skill training that they need. So it is a career path, not a one and done. And
Yeah.
the last thing about apprenticeship is we are living in a world of lifelong learning. So apprenticeship is part of the step along the way, but it's not the only step.
Right. It's very well said. I mean, we see it a lot with our apprentices. As you mentioned, we're group sponsors. We're working with individual companies who are actually teaching the apprentices. And it varies company to company, individual to individual. But we certainly see many apprentices who are strategically taking their related instruction at the community college and laddering it into the possibility of an associate's degree, and then moving from there and, really capitalizing on that opportunity. And then we also the opposite. We see folks who are like, I really, the related instruction piece of this is my least favorite, but at least it's relevant to me, right? At least I never liked classroom work, but at least this is something that I take back and I use in the job. And you did mention too that the fact that the company is investing in me is rewarding. We see so often the "what about me?" Somebody gets an apprenticeship, and then the person, four doors down says, "Hey, how come I can't do that?" And then the next thing you know, you've got 3 or 4 apprentices because it does work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. And the other thing about apprenticeships is it is a really wonderful way to diversify your employee base. It offers opportunity to people who might not
Right.
otherwise have that opportunity because it does come without student debt.
Yes, you did mention that in many cases it's incumbent workers, and that's been the way our program has worked for
Right.
the most part. I mean, we're looking at ways to work with pre-apprentices and bring people in, but and practically speaking, it is current employees, and it's people who have been on the job for maybe a few months or even a few years who are dedicated and have shown that they're capable and responsible, and the company does want to reward them and upskill them. And what I find interesting, and I'd love for you to talk about the registered apprentice concept, there is a rigor to it. I can do the counter argument to say that it's bureaucratic and crazy and too much, but I'm not going to do that some other time. But the truth is, it is meaningful because there is industry engagement and involvement in setting what those skills are. It's not haphazard. It is actually a trade. And I think that rigor really gives it value.
Yeah. It really makes you think about what you're doing. And the fact that it's, as you said, it's not just one individual employer. These training outlines often are used across many similar kinds of employment. So it kind of broadens the lens for what kind of training you actually should have. Instead of being very narrowly focused on what you're doing, you'll get a broader set of values in the training, which is wonderful. And I think that to your point about the bureaucratic stiffness of our regulations, November 14th, we're holding a summit in Albany on apprenticeship, and we will be announcing a lot of new developments that we're doing in apprenticeship. Particularly, we're going to have navigators that is their primary job, is to go out and sit down with new employers who want to set up a program, and they will literally navigate them through the initial steps of doing it because it is complicated. And it's complicated for a reason because it does have standards, and we don't want it to be slapdash. So these navigators will go out personally to the employer, sit down, work them through the steps of setting up their program. They'll be with them for whatever they need. They also have their ATRs afterwards, but the navigators will be there to literally navigate the opening process. We are developing an online system that will be so much more user-friendly and allow people to do work online that they now have to do by ink. And, one of the most difficult things in an agency, which I discovered, is that bureaucracies are built to last, but they are not built to change. And so being able to shift into a new way of doing things is not easy. And we have worked very, very hard. And a big key to this is having a digital online presence that will be user-friendly so employers can use it. Future apprentices it's much more useful for them. They can search it more easily because we understand you're our customer and we need to meet you where you are. And for too long, government and my agency said, we have this box that you have to fit in before we'll start talking to you. I hate that. So we're going to meet you where you are. And part of that is many people are now online. They don't meet in person as much. They don't want to have a wet ink signature on something. What is that? We still had to fax stuff in. Nobody owns a fax anymore. So we are really changing the landscape. It will be much more fluent. It will still have quirks and bends because that's the way regulations work. But I hope it will be more user-friendly for people, our current sponsors and future sponsors.
That's great. Is there a little bit of a timeline for those changes? There
is. The navigators will be hitting the ground soon, maybe as soon as November 14th. I mean, they're already here in the office, so I assume that they will be fanning out, The digital upgrade on the technology, it's being developed. So I wanted it 6 months ago. That didn't happen. There's a lot going on, as you can imagine. We're upgrading everything in the agency, but it's coming soon. And it's not a big bang. It'll be rolling out in pieces, so there'll be parts of it available before other parts, but it will be there soon. And we're very excited about it. And it will be, again, a conversation. Is this working for you? What else can we do? And I think that I say this all the time, the world of work is changing so rapidly, and we have to be prospective about it. We can't sit and wait for it to happen and then respond. We need to stay at least in step, if not ahead.
And honestly, with the opportunities that are presenting themselves around, semiconductor investments and things, I mean, your workforce development role has probably never been more important than it is in, coming up or presently and in the next 10 years. It's crucial.
So I tell people all the time, we don't have the abundance to waste people letting them sit on the bench.
That is well said.
We need every person in our workforce. We should not have the privilege to say only these people should apply because they already have the avenues into some kind of training. We need everybody, and everybody should be at the table. Everybody should be working at these jobs. And whatever we need to do to make sure that these trainings are available to everybody, we will do. Because I will say, as a very young woman, before I was an adult, I knew that there were professions that were not interested in me. And now a lot of that has changed. If I look at a kind of employment and nobody in my family and nobody I know does it, then how likely am I going to be to try to open that door?
Right.
So registered apprenticeships are really critical, and pre-apprenticeships are fabulous because they give people that first taste.
Right. Yeah, we've talked a little bit about this with the Workforce Investment Board, and we talk about it all the time with our members about career exploration. Mm-hmm. We do our manufacturing day once a year, but every day is manufacturing day for us. And we really want to get young people to see those opportunities. I mean, like you say, if you don't have that around your kitchen table in your immediate sphere, you don't know what an engineer does, or you don't know what an accountant does, you don't know what a machinist or a toolmaker does. And to see that opens your eyes. And you can see it and say, good, that's for somebody else. But you could also see it and say, wow, that looks great.
That looks cool.
And I want to at least keep my options open around that. And I think that that's something that's really important. And I have to say, the shift that I've noticed with our members over the last decade, being very open to that and recognizing that they need to be part of this process, that it's not, you can't leave it to the school or the Department of Labor or to SUNY. You've got to do it yourself, and you've got to be engaged, and you've got to be a part of it.
It has to be intentional. We don't have the luxury of saying to young people, here's a wide array of careers that you can choose from. Go out and explore. Yeah. So kids did that, and they had, lots of college debt, the 7-year college plan, or never graduated. Right. And they were defeated by the time they were 20. We cannot afford to do that. No. So it has to be intentional.
Right. Turning that model on its head and having people, maybe go to work and enter a trade and then go to college.
Yeah.
I mean, we see the success in that path all the time, and it's a hard cycle to break. I mean, and maybe you shouldn't for a lot of folks. For a lot of folks, it's I have a plan. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a school teacher. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get my thing. I'm going to become a professional. But it's not for everybody.
And I think that, it's lifelong learning. You're attracted to something, and as you practice it, you begin to understand that there are more doors behind that door. When I used to teach young students, I did a summer course occasionally for high school students who were interested in performance, and I did an on-camera class. And one of the first things I said to them was, you're here because the door to the entertainment business is acting for a high school student. Nobody in high school says, I want to be a producer or a set designer.
Right.
They want to be an actor because that's what's available. So understand that this is the doorway you're walking through. But on the other side of that door, there's an entire industry of opportunity. And you should poke around and see what else is there. And the same thing is true with manufacturing. You come in as a technician, but then you may realize that, actually being in management is actually really attractive. And that's something I could do. Those doors are open.
Yeah, absolutely. So that sounds like a great segue to talk about how Roberta Reardon became Commissioner Reardon. How do you end up in this seat as someone who was an actor and teacher and other things?
So actually, when I was in high school, I started working at a theater that had adult actors. So I was working with adult actors when I was 14. And they were not professional. They were not equity actors, but they were adults. And that was a really great experience because it really spoke to me. And acting was something that I did. It was mine. It was my voice, my imagination. It didn't belong to my brother. It's not because my aunt did it. It was mine. And that was very, very powerful. So graduated from college, moved to New York, started my acting career, and began to be successful. And along the way, I became involved in the politics of my union. And the first time I got recruited to run for the local and national board was because it was the first real attempt to merge AFTRA and SAG. And so I was in favor of it, and they recruited me to be in favor of it. I'm on the board. That failed. 3 years later, we tried again. Much more sophisticated approach. It also failed. But meanwhile, I was now really engaged in the policy and leadership of my union, which really surprised me. And I became elected local president. And in 2007, I decided to run for national president and won unanimously. And suddenly was in a fight for my life because my sister union, SAG, had decided to attack us and take us out of business. It was brutal. For 2.5 years, it was a labor war. Along the way, I was still working as an actor, but I was very much developing leadership skills and policymaking skills and negotiation skills.
Becoming very familiar with the issues up and down the line. Sure.
Very familiar, working with the AFL-CIO nationally. And in 2010, politics changed the leadership of Screen Actors Guild in Hollywood, and the new leadership was interested in merger. And we started the merger process. And I led that merger, and it was successful. And in 2012, we formed a new union. And that was an incredibly empowering experience. Still acting, marginally, because most of my time was being spent doing it, mind you, but still acting. And I realized that I really loved leadership, that it spoke to another part of my brain. And when I stepped down as the co-president, acting is a business that retires you. So that was beginning to thin out. And I did some consulting for the AFL-CIO. I spoke to Rich Trumka and pitched a plan, and he hired me to do it. And along the way, I also taught some classes at the CUNY Certificate School at that time, and sort of like putting stuff together. And in August of 2015, I was coming home from a trip to Austin, Texas for the AFL, and my phone rang in the car. And it was the second floor calling to see the governor wanted to nominate me as Commissioner of Labor. And I was stunned. I was like, what? Never in my wildest imagination, not on my plan at all. And I said, let me think about it. And I called a very, very dear friend, one of my mentors. I said, I've never worked in government. It's an agency. I don't know. He started laughing. He said, Roberta, you led the merger of two unions who hated each other. You can do this.
Okay.
So I said yes. And it has been an amazing experience. I have fallen in love with this job. I loved being the president of the union and leading the merger, and I loved being an actor. This really combines all of it. And I've always had a very deep sense of social responsibility. And so it all fits. I just spoke to a mentoring program that we do here at the agency before I hopped on with you. And I said, my motto in life, I'm an actor, so I did a lot of improv. The golden rule of improv is yes and. You never drop the ball. You never drop the ball. So in life, it's really important when an opportunity or an idea comes to you, open yourself up to it and see what the possibility is. You may not do it. There are a lot of other reasons why you may not do something, but don't just automatically say no.
Right. It's a small word, but yes, but as opposed to yes, and
yes, but is a killer.
Opens a lot. Yeah, it is a killer. But yes, and definitely opens a conversation and keeps the dialogue going in a friendly way.
And especially today, we're all so divided. Let's open ourselves to that conversation. And we need to be in our public squares, wherever they are. We need to meet each other there. It's what we did with employers. We need to understand from you what you need from us. We need to stop thinking for you and ask you what you need.
And I think employers need to recognize that there are employees, there are bad actors, there is a need for regulation, and there is a need for broad-based investment, not just specific to my industry. But I do think that is a dialogue that we're welcome to have. I just want to add one thing. I think I've told you this before, but I first saw you in action and did not know your background at all. Was in a budget hearing. I think it must have been 2019 or maybe even 2018 when we were pitching the MIAP funding and wanted to see it in the program. And you were getting grilled over something, not, that moment where the electeds are kind of playing to their own audience, right?
Yes.
And you were just so graceful and pleasant. And I'm like, how does she doing that? And then I found out that you were an actress. And I said to myself, oh, okay, she is employing those skills in her new role. Good for her. Transferable skills. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually, it's funny. My staff laughed at me. I actually enjoyed budget hearings because
I got that
a little
impression.
Bit of wouldn't pay. A lot of people are really afraid of them, and they could be awful. I mean, people really went after me, particularly during the pandemic. But I just feel like I have answers.
Right.
I'd like to hear them.
Yeah, I do appreciate that you are, keeping that dialogue open with everyone. We certainly see the change in the Department of Labor since you've been here, and we really appreciate it and the direction that you're taking it. Any final thoughts?
Let me just say what a terrific partner you are and have been from the very first time we met. I mean, you are so open to the registered apprenticeship program, but you're so open, you have a podcast, you're so open to ideas and conversation. And that is really, really meaningful. As you know, it is really easy to say, no, I have things to do. I can't do that. And you don't do that. You're really a wonderful partner. And I really appreciate your support and, your ability to reach in and say, this works and this doesn't. Let's have a conversation because I really believe in that.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate those kind words. Roberta Reardon, Commissioner of the New York State Department of Labor, thank you for being on the Council of Industry podcast.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Manufacturing Matters, brought to you by the Council of Industry and sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, accountants and advisors who understand the unique challenges and opportunities in the manufacturing sector. We hope you gained valuable insights and inspiration from today's discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.